to debate. What's that?
What's your background? What do you believe about the God?
Catholic. Catholic on that one. But it was more of, I know it's more of debating with, I guess the topic is, but it's just kind of what are some good points when, because I'm dealing with a lot of Mormons down here in Texas, and they become an increasing population.
All my exes are from Texas, dude. Shoot.
Yeah.
What are you trying to convince them? Trying to convince them of the Trinity? What are you trying to convince them of?
Yeah, I kind of convinced them of the Trinity because, like, I do pest control work, and I kind of put into awkward positions where, you know, they see that I'm Christian because I have my cross on, and then they kind of try to figure out what kind of Christian I am. I say I'm Catholic, and then they start kind of doing in the role into of like, well, you know, there is the whole entire thing of, you know, the corruption and the great apostasy and stuff like that. But then they always kind of usually lead into first that the Trinity is just three distinct persons, not one being, but three beings entirely.
Yeah, that's what they believe.
Yeah, and I kind of use the first part in Genesis as kind of a quick shoot off back to them with Abraham, with when God came to Abram at the time, and he had the two angels with him. But
right.
and I was just kind of like, but I noticed that one kind of, it's a great one to shoot off back with, but
your approach is not entirely off.
Yeah, it's just like I feel like there might be something else. I mean, especially when it comes down to the New Testament, maybe. And I've just been having a tough time figuring out.
Entirely off, brother. Your approach is entirely off, and you said, "Yeah," and you moved on. Your approach is wrong because they're assuming that there are three separate gods, three separate beings, and according to them, their God was the Father, who is a man elevated to godhood. He has a spiritual wife. They have a heavenly mother, and he's a personage of flesh. So he has a flesh and bone body. And his first son is Jehovah or Yahweh, and he's older brother Lucifer. What you're going to need to do is to show that the scriptures teach there's only one uncreated God who didn't become God. He always has been God, will always be God. And the scriptures identify the Father as that God, and the Son as that God, and the Spirit as that God. And at the same time, affirms they're not the same person. So when you take that data, the God of the Bible is not a man who became God. He's always been God, will always be God, created the heavens and the earth. And the Father's identified as that God. So the Father wasn't a man who was elevated to godhood. He's always been God, will always be God. But the Son is also identified as that God who then became man. And the Spirit is identified as that God, and yet they're not the same person. That's how you arrive at the Trinity. So you're going to Genesis 1 and showing them whatever. God said, let us make man, or Genesis 18. You need to go to the heart of the matter to show that the God of Scriptures has no beginning, has no end. He's always been the same, will always remain the same, unlike your God, who's a man, and you have a heavenly mother, and he pops up babies from them. This is where you got to go to. This is the heart of the matter. Go to the heart of the matter. My Bible says God has always been, will always be God. There wasn't a time in which he wasn't God and was elevated to godhood. You got to go to that issue, brother.
Gotcha. Okay. And then, yeah, because I guess maybe I need to sit down and kind of read through would you say to read through the Book of Mormon and try to understand their point of view with that?
You don't need to do that. If you go to my posts, my articles, I actually have articles showing you the Book of Mormon borders on modalism/Trinitarianism. The Book of Mormon shows Mormonism is a lie, because the Book of Mormon actually teaches that God has always been God, didn't become God, and always will be God. And it's confused because there are statements in which you get the impression God is a Trinity, but then statements in which Jesus is the Father and the Son. So Mormonism in itself does not teach the polytheistic, pagan, demonic doctrines that Joseph Smith and others later taught. Mormonism, the Book of Mormon when I say Book of Mormonism, meaning the Book of Mormon, actually teaches God has eternally, immutably been God, didn't become God, and he's not a personage of flesh. And you get the impression that the three are God, Father, Son, and Spirit. But then there are other statements where you get the impression Jesus is the Father and the Son. So instead of reading it, go to the articles. Here, I'll show you. So if you go to my blog, I'll get you the link and I'll enlarge it. And then my website, and there's a blog where all the articles are there. You put in the search engine right here, Joseph Smith, and it's documented. Then you'll see how Joseph Smith later contradicts himself, embarrasses himself, humiliates himself. So you see, I put in Joseph Smith. What came up?
Yeah. Joseph the Binitarian. Okay.
See, right here. And then I'll link to the other articles where it's like he goes from teaching Trinity / modalism. Modalism is the belief that Jesus is the Father. And at times sounds like he's a Trinitarian. Right here. So Joseph Smith debate, I show you the evolution. So I show you he's a polytheist. Later on, he talks about gods and there are multiple gods, right? And God was a man who became God, and he has a body of flesh and bone. But then I show you from other statements, God has always been God, and he's unchangeable, immutable. Book of Mormon, Doctrines and Covenants, right there, receipts. Right?
Yeah. And basically with Mormonism too, if I'm to my understanding of it, because they believe that they themselves can become God.
Yeah, that's why they were sent here. See, again, I have a post. The fantasy land, the fantasy world of Joseph Smith. It would make for good comedy, and it would make a good cartoon.
Did you got the Book of Mormon, the musical?
Well, I'll tell you why. Here, if I put in Satan, Heavenly Mother, Satan, Heavenly Mother, the Mormon Satan and Premortality. I did sessions on it, by the way. I don't know if I started the playlist yet on Joseph Smith, the false prophet. I'll start a playlist. But if you put in Mormon or Joseph Smith, I did sessions using these articles. Let me tell you the Mormon fairy tale. Ready?
Yeah.
Let me tell you the Mormon fairy tale. God the Father was a man who was elevated to godhood. That means there must have been a God before him, which means that God did not create the heavens and the earth from nothing. Mormons do not believe their God created what we say, creatio ex nihilo, creation from nothing. What their God did with other gods, they refashioned, reorganized already existing matter. You with me there?
Kinda. So they believe that there's basically a pantheon. And
yeah, polytheists. There's multiple gods. That's the later Joseph Smith. Remember, he evolved, right?
Okay, yeah.
What I'm showing you is early Joseph Smith taught a form of Trinitarianism that also sounded modalistic because he had Jesus being the Father and the Son. That's modalism. Later on, Joseph Smith and those who came after him changed their view, and then they started teaching, like Brigham Young taught the Adam God theory, that Adam is actually the God and Father of us. And he has multiple wives, and he appeared with one of his wives, Eve, and that Adam is the one who got Mary pregnant with Jesus. That was what Brigham Young taught, but they try to deny and disassociate from his teaching. Blasphemous, wicked, immoral. But let me tell you their fairy tale. And I give you the receipts right here. And which each article, I link to their website. So you go right here. Here it is. Their official website. You click, boom, so that people don't think I'm lying. There it is, Heavenly Parents. Now let me tell you their fairy tale. You ready? Guys, listen to their fairy tale. Yeah, it's funny, brother. Let me walk you through this. That's why the cowards don't debate their God. They will debate the Trinity, but not their fake, wicked, polytheistic, pagan, demonic doctrines, because they're humiliated, embarrassed. So this is their version. God the Father was a man. That means he's not the original God. Someone was above him. And they don't even know who the original God is. because God the Father lived on a planet, elevated to godhood. He became God. But remember, as a man, that means he had a body of flesh, right?
Yeah.
And he now has a body of flesh and bones. Okay? Because he was a man. They have
So
a
yeah,
heavenly mother. That's why it says heavenly parents. They say, we don't know much about her. We're not allowed to speak to her. We only pray to God. But we know she's there and she cares for us and loves us. So he's got a wifey. At least one. Others say he's got multiple. Right? But nonetheless, if you're following me, hold on, let's get Kareem. If you're a Muslim, I'll bring you up next. Okay. Be patient, guys. Let's follow their fairy tale. So he sired children. They won't come out and say, well, he sired them sexually. But nonetheless, they are his children. Well, how are they his children? From a heavenly mother. Well, how did he get them to be his children? You understand the problem? If you're telling me there's a heavenly mother, he has a wife, and they have children. Well, how did she conceive and give birth? Obviously, their God and Father had to do something, right?
yeah,
But they're not going to come out and say it. You get my point?
yeah, exactly. Because like there,
It's
so first
glorified
off, there's
paganism.
another God there, which is the Heavenly Mother, which
Yes,
I guess in this
and he has
point would be a
children
little
with her.
bit lower than the Father.
Well, remember, she's subservient to him. But my point
Subservient.
is,
Yeah.
they have children. If she is their mother and he is their father, how do they become the children of both if there's not some connection between the father and her? That somehow he's impregnating her. You get it?
Yeah. Because wow,
Yeah,
I need a
it's glorified paganism. It's the pagan polytheistic beliefs of the Greeks, like Zeus and all that, because these were beings who had bodies who could have sex with each other. But nonetheless, now we got that part. God the Father wanted to gift his spirit children. Oh, and this is what I forgot to tell you. They believe in the premortality of all human beings, meaning you and I existed as spirit sons and daughters of our parents. That's why we're here. Let me explain their fairy tale. This is all here documented, brother. Not
So
making it
they're
up.
also Gnostic on top of this?
Well, when you say Gnostic, what do you mean? Be more specific.
Well, yeah, more of kind of like this physical bad spiritual good kind of thing. Is that would that be
Well,
also a thing?
no,
Because
no,
I mean, and
no.
oh, go ahead.
Gnosticism is different.
Okay,
Gnosticism is the monad, and then you have the pleroma and the aeons that come down, and the lower the aeon, the further away from divinity, the more prone to being corrupt, tainted. But nonetheless, no, don't confuse yourself.
gotcha.
The heavenly parents had children. Are you here in the flesh? You?
Yes.
That's because you were there as a spirit son of Elohim and Heavenly Mother. And what happened was God wanted to gift you with the ability to become your own God, having your own wives and your own planet. That's what Mormons believe. They will all become their own gods if they follow the demonic, satanic, Masonic rituals that Mormons must carry out in their temples of Satan. It's all documented because Joseph Smith was a Mason. So he adopted a lot of Masonic practices, rituals, and made them part of his demonic satanic cult. This is all facts. I'm not making it up, but not to confuse you. So you were there. I was there. They had a council. Okay. They had a council. What was the council? A meeting of the gods and goddesses. Right? Because if you had, well, they're not gods and goddesses. Let me correct myself. Okay, let me be careful. Hold on, Mormons, don't stone me. You were not gods and goddesses yet, even though it says the gods came down. How does that work out? I don't know. Because they say you were sent to become gods, but then they have passages where it's a council of gods. They come down and reorganize matter. They're all over the map. But I want to be careful. We were there, and God the Father said, hey, I want you guys to become gods and have your own planets and have your own kiddos. But we got to come up with a plan to do it. So I was a man with a body of flesh. So you have to follow the same process I did to attain godhood. So that means you got to be in the flesh, right? But when you go in the flesh, you're going to have to do what I tell you to do to achieve godhood like I did. Otherwise, you'll fail. So how are we going to do this to make sure you don't fail? Well, Yahweh said, I will go to the earth. I will then die for their sins so that if they make mistakes and fail and repent, they can be forgiven. Lucifer, Yahweh's younger brother, said, I will force them to obey you so they don't fail. No free will. You want me there?
Yeah.
So the majority went with Yahweh's counsel, saying, we like Yahweh's idea. We will agree with his plan that you give us free will, and if we fail to do what is right and repent, he'll die to procure our forgiveness by his shed blood. Okay. The ones who agreed with Lucifer, right, and Lucifer were upset that they went with Yahweh's counsel. So Lucifer and those who agreed with him said, we don't accept it. So they were then rejected. They were cast out. So Lucifer and those who agreed with him are the demons who were not sent to become flesh. All those that agreed with Yahweh, they are now the ones who are in the flesh. So you agreed with Yahweh, which is why you were sent in the flesh. But part of the deal was, when they sent you in the flesh, God the Father would erase your memory of your pre-human existence in heaven. That's why you don't remember it.
That's confusing.
That's Mormonism.
Yeah, that's, I mean, not too far off. Yeah. Okay, yeah, I guess I'll take a look throughout the whole entire with your articles and stuff like that, and take a look into it, because
So that's what you're going to focus on. You're going to focus on the nature of God. You're going to say, your God has nothing to do with the true God of Scripture. Our God is not a man with a body of flesh. He's a personage of flesh and bone, who then became God. Our God has been and will always be God. Your God does not exist. That's what you start with. The Bible does not teach your God. You have a council of gods, none of whom is the original God, because their God was a man. That means he didn't create the heavens and the earth. Someone brought him into being. And if you ask him, I asked the Mormon, I'm not lying, I asked him, who is the original God behind all these gods? He goes, we don't know.
yeah, that makes no sense, because it's like, if that's the original God, then let's worship that one. And because
They
if
don't
the
know who he is.
original, oh
They don't
sorry,
know
yeah,
who he is.
yeah, and they don't know who he is, and it's like, when what makes, from their version of Yahweh, what makes him more special than the original one?
Yeah, but Yahweh is Jesus. You didn't get it.
Hmm.
God the Father is called Elohim. They'll say, yeah, you can call them Yahweh. But initially, Elohim was the name of the Father. Yahweh, you didn't hear what I said? Who proposed that he die for them? Yahweh. So Yahweh is the first son of Elohim and his heavenly wife. He came into being.
Yeah. So then again, yeah, that's wow. Okay.
It has nothing to do with the God of the Bible.
Nothing. No,
Nothing to,
absolutely
so
nothing.
you're letting
It's
them get away with murder by not hammering. Wait, dude, isn't your God, wasn't he a man who still has a body of flesh? Don't you have a heavenly mother? Yeah. And they had children together? Yes. And their first child that they brought into being was Yahweh. Now, here's another confusion. If their father is a glorified man because he has a body of flesh and bone, how do you sire children that have no flesh and bone body? That's another mystery.
I mean, I guess you can give them a little bit of credence and say that there's a spiritual birth, but no, like,
Buddy,
not
I
a
am
full sire.
flesh. If I am flesh, how do I avoid begetting children that are flesh?
You can, because that's a biological component.
But to them, None of them had flesh bodies. They're all spirits. But their father has a flesh body. Things that make you go, It's a stupid religion. It's stupider, more wicked, more pagan, more polytheistic than Islam. Islam's actually closer to us because Islam, Allah, whom they say is the God of Abraham, has no beginning, no end. And he doesn't have a body of flesh and bone. At least the Islamic concept is much closer to the Judeo-Christian concept. Mormonism is out to lunch. Mormonism is closer to Hinduism and the Greek pagan mythologies.
Yeah, that's a lot to take in. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Read the articles and watch my sessions, and then start asking right questions. Then they'll avoid you like the plague.
Thank God for that.
Praise the Lord.